Hi, this is Street Life and I'm Natasha, back at it with a review of Bonnie and Clyde. Bonnie and Clyde is a classic starring Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway as the robbers, Bonnie Parker and Clyde Barrow. The movie starts off with these two meeting by chance, which is what I guess often happens with these criminal duos. Over the years in pop culture, their relationship has become somewhat romanticized as, I guess, an idealized couple. But that's not really the case. I think we see some indications of that in the film here where they meet through happenstance. Bonnie from conversation kind of shares her disbelief at Clyde being a robber, right? Like he tells her a little bit about his past, having been to prison for armed robbery, some of the other things that he's been into and done. She doesn't believe him, which leads to him robbing a little shop in her town. And the two of them take off together. They pull over. It offers an opportunity for the two of them to speak, get further insight into their backgrounds. Some of the things that are typically glossed over in the telling of the story of Bonnie and Clyde, in part, I think, is a result of their relationship being like romanticized. The relationship has become romanticized, but it wasn't exactly like the romantic relationship that people imagine it was. It was certainly dysfunctional, but wasn't necessarily that romantic, right? Like over the years, you've had rappers such as Tupac as well as Jay-Z release like songs about Bonnie and Clyde and this kind of nonsense. I think it indicates that people have romantic notions about these types of stories, right? Not just that they don't, and I think part of it is that they don't have a full understanding or they don't have an accurate understanding of what really took place in these stories, right? I can't remember if it was like a podcast or something like that I watched, but they were discussing Bonnie and Clyde, with Clyde being, I think, like bisexual or something like that. And him having had like some inappropriate contact with one of the individuals that they kind of took hostage. And I think like the guy was part of their group for a little while. I don't quite remember the details, but it's kind of hinted at like the beginning of the movie where after robbing the store, driving out of town, Bonnie is like all over Clyde, kissing him and whatnot. And I guess she's like excited from what's taken place. And he brushes her off, right? He explains that while she might have her expectations of him like being a lover boy, he's not much of a lover or anything like that. He doesn't state that he's like gay or bisexual or anything like that. He doesn't give a name to it, but that's that he's not always up for action. It's hinted at something that you might ask yourself is like, what's this guy's deal? So, granted, I don't know, I guess different things turn different people on. I don't know about a robbery, but in turn, Clyde profiles Bonnie, like what she's been up to up to this point. Her coming from a large family in East Texas, craving an opportunity to get out into the world, to see some kind of excitement. And he's able to just like rattle off details about her, not fully getting everything right, but the main gist of her story. He's able to tell her without having had any real prior conversation. He guesses correctly that she's excited by this potential lifestyle because it would offer a change, an opportunity for something to happen beyond what she become used to. So throughout the course of the film, we see Bonnie and Clyde, they pick up accomplices, right? They actually link up with Clyde's brother and his annoying wife. And even as they're running around and whatnot, it changes the vibe of the group. When it goes from 2 to 3 and then 5, they meet this guy, CW. He seems to be sort of, in the same boat as Bonnie. He's a pretty regular guy from a small town looking for a bit of excitement, and he decides to just tag along with them. He wasn't too bad. But Clyde's brother and sister-in-law, Bonnie wasn't here for them and neither was I. I thought they were really annoying. The wife especially, because she was like loud. She was like irate. She would rant. I'm not endorsing like the criminal lifestyle or anything like that. But this woman, like, she just annoyed me. There's like multiple scenes where you can see Bonnie is just aggravated with her. A little bit shady as well towards her at times, like passive aggressive, but then like just openly hostile at others. And I do believe it was because this woman was annoying. She was just loud and irritating. And the brother wasn't that much better either. He was aggravating as well. But the sister-in-law in particular irritated me. I was here with Bonnie on those points. So it's like, here it is. They go into town. They attempt to pull off a robbery and whatnot. The wife doesn't really do anything. She's just a chatterbox. But then she gets a cut of the money. Here it is. You have the rest of them who are like risking their lives and they're splitting up the money. But as Bonnie mentions, this money that they're gathering, giving a cut to this woman who hasn't participated in any real way, Bonnie's family isn't getting a cut of the money, at least not at that point. And it's like, given that this is during the Great Depression period, this is like when a lot of those Depression era gangsters would come about. And that plays a part in the film, right? In that you see there are multiple scenes where regular citizens who aren't involved in any kind of criminal dealings or anything along those lines, they actually render aid to Bonnie and Clyde. And this is something that you hear about, like when during the Depression era, gangsters and bank robbers and things like that, you would have regular citizens. Number one, I guess, because it was like an interesting story, because it's like, even today, when you think about it, they don't happen that frequently, but consider like high-speed chases. Like when they come on TV, people tune into them. If you think of like big court cases, people tune in. So like, true crime and whatnot. So people are into that. And I think they were back then as well. And so part of it is that it goes back to this thing of the media covering these seemingly exciting stories, right, of these daring bandits, where for a lot of people, especially those in small towns, it's probably some bit of excitement. Their lives are probably pretty boring on a day-to-day basis. You're doing the same thing day in and day out. You're seeing the same people day in and day out. And so reading these news stories might give you a little bit of excitement. But then, in addition to that, some people actually go a bit further by rendering aid. And I think it's something that we see rather early on in the film, where Bonnie and Clyde are hiding out at like this abandoned house. It turns out that the house has been foreclosed by a bank. They've taken it away from what appears to be a farmer. He's a little bit scared of them initially, but they don't do anything to him. The farmer guy explains the situation that, he's just stopping by to take a last look at the house. It used to be his, but it's been taken over by the bank. And so there's some compassion on the part of Bonnie and Clyde, right, where Clyde gives him a gun and allows him to shoot into the bank sign out in front of the house, right, giving him an opportunity to kind of blow off a little bit of steam. It's not a thing effective in the long term, but in the short term, it gives him some degree of satisfaction, a means of getting back at the bank. And I think that maybe for a lot of people that were alive at that time who were struggling through the Great Depression, they might have seen the collapse of the economy as being a result of the machinations of bankers and these other individuals, government and whoever else. You have these people that, right or wrong, in a sense, are fighting back, right? Taking the chances to push back, to get something for themselves. And I think you had some rank and file citizens that commiserated with that. Not necessarily that this was anything that they themselves were interested in doing or being a part of, but that they understood the feeling that might drive someone to such a thing. And so with that, when coming into contact with Bonnie and Clyde, where possible, some regular people rendered support. I think the story of Bonnie and Clyde is one of those stories where you get the sense that people pick and choose to take from it what they want, but don't necessarily consider it in its entirety. In the sense, I would consider Bonnie and Clyde to be quite similar in some ways to, if you think of like Scarface, and how people feel about it and reference it, where they idolize this relationship between these two individuals. And this is in a manner in which you hear people speak about their own relationships, or like their hoped for relationships, their relationship goals. Some people seem to, like, this is what they refer to as relationship goals. But it seems to have been a dysfunctional relationship. As Bonnie points out, at some points, it's not like your usual or your typical romantic relationship. It's just like with Scarface, where people want this, or it's like goals for them. It's a scenario which they can imagine themselves in. It gives you the sense that they haven't seen the entire movie. There's so many instances like watching true crime documentaries and whatnot. You hear so many drug dealers that talk about seeing Scarface in the 80s. And it's like the lifestyle and whatnot either made them want to sell drugs, or, when they were selling drugs and living that life, they patterned themselves after Scarface. And it's like, you do realize like he died at the end of the movie, right? Like his world fell apart. Him and his lady friend were on the outs. He killed his best friend. He ends up becoming a cocaine addict, addicted to the very same drug that he was selling, and he dies at the end. It's like, did you stop watching the movie? Because I don't think you saw the whole thing. Not if this is what you're patterning yourself after. And so it's like the same thing here with Bonnie and Clyde. For you to idolize this relationship, that you would have a woman that's down for you like that, you would have a man that's down for you like that. It's like, they just shot up at the end of the movie, much as they did in real life. Sure, there's a few moments where they're laughing and joking and whatnot. It's like happy and positive and whatnot. But throughout, Bonnie's having to deal with Clyde's annoying sister-in-law and his brother. You know, they're away from their families. They're constantly on the run. You have the police looking for you. And it's like this Bonnie and Clyde thing. It's not my idea of like relationship goals, you know, going out in a flurry of gunfire, because they got shot up at the end of the movie. Not to laugh, like, you know, I'm sorry. I feel like you didn't watch the whole movie, or you stopped watching at some point, because when thinking about relationships, we're not thinking about the same movie. I guess, you know, with Valentine's Day, maybe you could see it as a romantic film, you know, in the sense that people idolize it, but it's incredibly problematic when people refer to their relationship with their significant other as them being Bonnie and Clyde. It's not given what you think is given, you know, because it's like, are your relationship goals to go on a crime spree, not have sex, and then get shot the hell up? I mean, really? I think it's really interesting. I remember watching this film for the first time like quite a few years ago, and I enjoyed it then. I thought it was pretty all right. You know, rewatching this time. Not that it was bad or anything like that. I felt like some of the acting was a little bit campy, but it's still a watchable film. It's still a film that you can watch and enjoy, but it's not necessarily a film that I would watch particularly often. Though in watching the film this time around, I knew that Faye Dunaway and Warren Beatty were the stars of the film, but watching it previously, I don't think I noticed that Gene Hackman plays Clyde's brother, or that Gene Wilder also makes an appearance. But all in all, it's a pretty cool film, definitely worth checking out. Just don't set your relationship goals according to this. Thanks for tuning in. To ensure you don't miss any episodes, subscribe to the channel, click the notification bell, and check out my movie review playlist. Go ahead and click the thumbs up button if you like what you saw, and go ahead and share it on social media.